Great to see you. And something that I wanted to say, just in the just to get this started, I'd wanted to interview you previously, and then I listened to your interview with Dan. And one thing about the interview, and this might surprise you, one thing about your interview that I really appreciated was you really broke down kind of the financial mechanisms at work during COVID. And I just, it was just something I knew about, but you did it in a way that was very understandable.
Oh,
So,
thanks.
you know, just,
Thank you.
well, you gotta give credit where credit's due. So I'm gonna jump into this. Some of these questions I'm sure that you've heard before. Some of them maybe not. But here, let's do it. So Billy, how did you get into hardcore?
Let's see. I guess the way that I got into hardcore, I guess I need to give it some perspective. It was probably the mid to late 70s, and I lived in Southern California. And on the street that I lived, there were two kinds of kids. There were kids and there were a lot of kids on my street, but there were kids that were in bands like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin. And then there were kids that were into these really weird bands like the Sex Pistols and the Dead Kennedys and the Ramones and the Misfits. Anyway, I got my hands on some of that material and was just fascinated by the lyrics. They were really passionate about something. And the bands like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin, I like the music, but the content of the message didn't really resonate with me. I think I was too young to appreciate Black Dog, so anyway, yeah, it. Just kind of was a rabbit hole that just went deeper and deeper and deeper.
So then, how did that then manifest itself into playing? Was it like you were just started going to shows? Did you do a zine? Did you start meeting people? Like, how do you make the jump? Because was Half Off your first band?
It was, and I wasn't an original member, technically. I was invited to join Half Off after their original singer, that they had to kick him out for whatever reason. But when we think about this, so I was going to shows and I was just a teenager, and the idea of publishing some kind of zine that was primarily aimed at trying to stop violence at shows. That's the thing that was really I think my main goal was, if I can hand out some kind of flyer or some kind of zine, I can have content that addresses violence at shows. And if I interview bands or have cool pictures or something else, then people will want to read it. And if people want to read it, maybe I can sneak in some stuff about, hey, maybe you shouldn't beat someone up because, they have the wrong color hair or whatever. And so originally, Think Fanzine was a single page flyer. And then I think there were maybe one or two of those, and then it turned into a full blown zine. And then it was interviewing bands. And then from doing that, I got invited to be in a band, and from being in a band, I got invited to be a part of a record company, and it blossomed.
So then, how did you get into Half Off? Because you hadn't sang in a band before. Like, did you know that you could sing? Did you? I mean,
well, I would first state for the record that I can't sing, and
but keep going.
Anyway, I mean, when I look back at the music that we created, I would say, with the exception of a couple of my vocal performances, for the most part, my vocals were just hideous. But Half Off had been invited to record a song at Radio Tokyo in Venice for a Wishing Well compilation album that never came out. And they were having trouble getting their singer to show up for the recording session. So they had to kick him out at the last minute. And they invited me to come and sing, at like literally the 11th hour. And I had to decide if I wanted to be in a band right then and there.
Were there already lyrics? Okay.
Yeah, the song was "Who Writes Your Rules," which was written by the original bass player, and the lyrics really meant nothing to me, and it was just okay. I guess I'm in a band now.
Gotcha. So then, because you guys do that, and I mean, Half Off played a lot of shows. Like you guys did a lot, in my opinion, as a band. You guys played with a lot of really good bands. It's just it's really interesting to me how you joined this thing and you never thought about doing a band. Like that's I never knew that.
I was already very connected because I had been going from record store to record store selling zines, and I knew lots of people in the scene from that. I had done interviews with a multitude of different bands. In fact, I had even interviewed Half Off before uh, before I was in the band. So yeah, I don't know. It was just sort of natural, and then once it came time to be, I guess I would also consider myself to be sort of the manager of the band. I was always the one organizing things, and I've always had a knack for putting things like that together.
So then, what got you with the fanzine to start going to record stores? Because, like, for instance, when I formed Ringside Records, and I was putting out bands, I wanted to go and get the bands into. I mean, I'm get the stuff into stores, but I only knew that that was possible because people like yourself had gone in and gotten stuff in stores. What what in your mind brought that about? Was it like sort of like, hey, I want to go beyond the shows and now I want to like get it in the stores? Or
I think what it probably was, if I had to pinpoint anything, I'm not even sure if this was simultaneous that it happened or if I need to give credit. But Kirk Dominguez used to put out a zine SFTG, and I would see him with copies of SFTG when I would be in line for a show. But then I'd go to Zed Records, and the zine that I just bought from Kirk, over the weekend, at Fenders or wherever, that same zine would be in the rack at Zed. And so I finally, I don't know, I just asked, how do you sell these things here? And so then that's how it came about.
yeah, Kirk is a guy. I mean, if there isn't a book of his photography in the works, or if it doesn't already exist, I mean, there should be. He really like it's his pictures are like seminal, in my opinion, very seminal to the coverage of like that scene back then. And I mean, whatever else he's gone on to cover, he has an eye. He's very gifted.
Yeah, Kirk is the real deal, and if you were in Los Angeles and the Greater LA area in the '80s, I mean, you look around and he would always be there. And if he wasn't there, then you knew that wherever you were wasn't the cool place to be. There was somewhere better to be that night, and you weren't cool enough to know about it. That's just how it worked with him.
So then you're doing Half Off, and this is something I didn't know in doing my research about you for this interview. I didn't know that you didn't form New Beginnings. Like you were asked to join that. Can you like is that fascinates this whole aspect, the whole business, the whole because you guys did things that I believe like honestly were like seminal into like laying the groundwork for things that I was able to go on to do and all the way through what's currently happening now.
Yeah, so I mean, some of this I have to really go back in memory to piece it together accurately, and some of it I wasn't there for, so it's just been repeated to me. And if I hurt anyone's feelings or rub anyone the wrong way, understand that I'm just repeating what I've been told. But I believe that Capo and Bessie Oakley were dating, and they had an idea of starting a record company, and they enlisted Mike Truchon and Jordan Cooper. And then somewhere along the way to releasing the first record, uh, that that unity amongst those people dissolved, and I have no idea why. But the other thing that became apparent was that they needed someone on the ground in the Los Angeles area to deal with the printing company and also the pressing plant. And yeah, can't stress this enough that this is before there was an internet, and before there was the ability to make a long distance call without there being a very expensive cost associated. Everything was complicated. So anyway, they enlisted my help, and so I was the one who really did all the legwork in the manufacturing process of the Crippled Youth record, and then distribution ended up being a huge part of what I did too. Early on, Mike Truchon did the mail order, but I was kind of thrust into it, or maybe I stuck my foot in the door and inserted myself. But by the time the Underdog record came out, Ray Capo was completely out of the picture, and it was really just me, Mike, and Bessie.
How do you get Underdog on the label? Was that Ray in New York talking to Richie, getting you a demo?
That's before my time. I don't know exactly, but right around that same time, so in between the Crippled Youth record being released and the Underdog record being released, I went to New York with Bessie, and I got to meet all those people, the people from Underdog and the people from Crippled Youth. And Underdog was not out at that point in time. It was about to be released. And so anyway, I think that it had already been in the works, and I don't know if it was Ray that had found them and promised them a record. I don't know for sure.
And then Warzone also, there was a Warzone record on... No, okay.
No, we didn't put out Warzone.
Gotcha. So that would have been Revelation, because then Ray and Jordan, because it isn't... I think that's Revelation 1. I mean, I probably should know this, given my...
There's some sort of dorky record collector that is like really mad at us that that we don't know this.
Right. But you know what? At the same time, what they should appreciate is the fact that we are trying to create something so that if people are interested in the stuff, they can go and find out the information on their own.
Right.
Just like...
It's very important.
Well, I mean, just like you did with starting, your zine, which led to you doing a band. I mean, you had this desire. And so what does distribution look like? I know you've said no internet. Like, how do you find out about record stores? How do you create a distribution network?
You would see something in a magazine, in another zine that you somehow got your hands on, from traveling and going to record stores, or from, like, you'd see like a nationwide zine like Maximum Rock and Roll or Flipside, and you'd see reference to a record store in a different city, and you'd call them and say, hey, I've got this record, would you consider selling it on consignment? And they'd either say yes or no, and you'd get the name of the person and send them 10 records and hope that if you called them back in a month, they'd tell you if any had sold or not and send you a check for your for like $10. It was a completely futile enterprise.
Well, no, I mean, and okay, now at the time though, what were your thoughts about it? I mean, you especially now that you're also in, that you are I don't want to say that you're a banker, because that makes, I'm saying that your job is I'm sure much more different, much more involved than that. But like, what were your thoughts at the time? Were you like, this is amazing, I'm happy to be helping this music get out to where it's getting? Or...
Totally. I was just totally stoked to be interacting with like-minded people in different places. At the time, it was such a revelation that there were other people like me with similar interests, in other cities, other states, other countries. At the time, it was so unusual to find people that were into anything alternative at all. That being able to call someone in another state and and talk to them about it was incredible.
So then, how does Youth of Today play into this with New Beginnings? Because you guys did a Youth of Today thing, correct, on New Beginnings?
No, no, we never released any Youth of Today stuff. But the way that Youth of Today plays into this is before, in between, well, at the time of Think Fanzine, but before I was in New Beginning, Youth of Today did what I'm going to call a mini tour in California, and Dan and I went to see them somewhere. I don't know. It was like somewhere like in Azusa or something like that, and that's where I met Bessie and Ray and Purcell.
Gotcha.
And Kevin Seconds was playing drums for them at the time.
Oh wow. Okay. So that is the whole. Okay. Cool. So you don't go to that show. Your life could have been. I mean, it could have been much different potentially.
I don't know. I was already pretty diehard about all that stuff. I think I was already on a path that was leading me in certain direction. I'm sure it would have been different, but I don't know how yet.